A confirmation about the audio, please. If the audio is clear and available, kindly confirm the same. Thank you. So, hello, a very warm good evening to all of you, and welcome to Byju's Exam Prep IAS. Welcome to today's webinar where we shall be talking about mains-based current affairs for GS Paper 3, which have appeared in the portion of current affairs for the past month and which are relevant for your mains examination. So, whether it has appeared in any particular newspaper or any other important avenue, we have taken those topics which are relevant for your mains examination, where you need to have a deeper level of understanding as such. So that is what we are going to hold the discussion for today. And we are going to overall take a look at 6 different topics in the course of the discussion. And as we move ahead, we shall also be taking up the questions which can appear from those particular areas and how to approach the answer writing for those particular set of questions. So here, before taking a look at the topics, here basically announcement for all of you, that all of you who are appearing for the mains exam or preparing for the mains exam in general, even if you are not appearing for it this time, kindly take up the mains test series and try to write the answers. That is very, very important in framing your preparation. Oftentimes we end up delaying the answer writing process, and as a result of that, we become largely concentrated on prelims itself. So give a final edge to your preparation and take the mains test series. Now, without further ado, let us take a look at the topics that we are going to discuss today. So, first of all, we are going to discuss about India joins Artemi Accord. Now, what is that Artemi Accord and what are the various different stages of it, and what are the nuances, pros and cons associated with India's partnership in the case of Artemis Accord. Then we are going to talk about deep sea mining, the perspectives of it, whether it is going to be beneficial, whether it is going to provide energy security in general, or what can be the drawbacks in the long run. You have certain companies who have come ahead. For example, you have companies such as Google, Apple, and so on, who are coming ahead and saying that we are not going to utilize any of the product mined from the deep sea. So we are going to analyze that. Then the government has clarified the norms for the green credit program. So what is that green credit program? It is not the carbon credit, it is the green credit. So what is that green credit program? What and how will it help in various different environmental sustainability activities, and what can be the drawbacks and challenges that we have to look out for? Then we are going to talk about the Bonn Climate Meet, which was conducted recently, and the aspect of global stock taking, which is very important for your Paris Agreement clauses. That is again something that we are going to discuss. Then rainwater harvesting for sustainable agriculture. What is rainwater harvesting? Why is it relevant? What do we understand by the term sustainable agriculture? Where is it that it is going to help us in the short term and in the long run? And water conservation through community planning. So both of these articles have appeared in the magazine Kurukshetra. Now, Kurukshetra and Yojana also relevant. Now, water conservation through community planning, in this particular topic, we are going to list out the various different schemes for water conservation being carried out by the various different states as well as at the central level. And that is important for your mains exam preparation in general, because once you are aware of these, you'll be able to portray it beautifully well in your answers, making your answers more authentic. So overall, the entire discussion that we are going to carry out, it is going to revolve around how to write the answers and how these particular topics can be framed into question and answer format. So let us take the first topic of the day and let us start the discussion. Now, whichever doubts that you have, please feel absolutely free. Without inhibition, please ask that doubt. Our subject matter experts, the very qualified subject matter experts, they will try their level best to answer them immediately. But even if, let's say, there is a time lag, have some patience. At the end of the session, we will, after we have completed the discussion, we will take all the questions which are possible, as many questions as possible. And after each topic, I will try to take certain amount of questions from your side as well. So with that, let us initiate the discussion for the first topic, that is India joins the Artemis Accord. Now, in the recent recently concluded Prime Minister's visit to United States. There were a slew of various different agreements and partnerships which were announced. And I'm sure if you are following current affairs, you would be very well aware of the various different developments which have happened in terms of defense partnerships, developments which have happened in the form of, let's say, chip manufacturing investment in India, and also some Indian investment in United States. So there have been certain developments which have happened, certain deals which have been signed. Now, one of the deals which is also very important, which always, and while the reportage of the news, if you follow, that was quite under the radar, it was not given much attention to, was the fact that India finally joined the Artemis Accord. Now, what is this Artemis Accord? So, first of all, let us understand. I'm sure you would be aware of it, but in case you are not aware, what do we mean by an accord? So, whenever you hear the term accord, it basically refers to an official agreement of sorts or a kind of a treaty of forms. So, here, what is this Artemis Accord? And what is it that India, being a partner of Artemis Accord or joining that Artemis Accord, how will it change the conditions of space exploration that we have in our country? So first of all, when we take a look at the Artemis Accord, it was basically initiated by United States, that is the government, and NASA, which is the main astronomical research organization in United States. So they had launched this particular program for space exploration. And that space exploration program was partnered with many different nations. And we are going to take a look at the founding members as well. So all those nations, they came together. And the larger purpose, which was a peaceful collaboration for space exploration. Because please understand, when you take a look at the geopolitical scenario as of now, you would find that each and every country is vying for a kind of a space race. And that is for some kind of a, let's say, there is always going to be development of technology also when you develop your own space capabilities. But at the same time, eventually, what is the purpose? Why is it that we want to reach the space? Be it India, be it China, be it Russia, be it United States, why is it that everyone wants to reach the space? Is it to finally boast about it that finally we have reached the space and beyond? No, because the space holds many different secrets which help us understand the formation of the planet Earth itself. And better that we understand the formation of the planet Earth, better we will be able to understand the conditionalities which are present in the interior. So, also a greater awareness about the mineral composition, a greater awareness about the entire solar system and the universe in itself, that is very, very important. So, that is the prime purpose of space exploration. But in that space race which is carried on, what happens is, let's suppose United States is spending some amount of budgetary allocation for that space exploration. China will be spending a separate amount, India will be spending a separate amount, Russia will be spending some separate amount. So there is a kind of a duplication of work which happens. So keeping that in mind, an international treaty or accord was arrived at, which was initiated by NASA and the US government. And various different countries, they came on board. Now, that is the basis or the genesis of the Artemis Accord. Now, this Artemis Accord, with the joining of India as a member, now you have a total of 27 nations. 27 nations are a part of this Artemis Accord. So, it is a set of statements that set out common principles, guidelines, and best practices applicable to the safe exploration of the moon and eventually beyond as humanity extends its curiosity about the space. And the aim is even to reach Mars, have a kind of a sort of launch pad from moon where you can have a temporary shelter, and that is how the future space exploration will go. Now, here the logic is very simple. Mankind had reached moon a long time back. It was in 1969 when man or human being for the first time landed on moon. But ever since the shutdown of the Apollo program, which actually carried Neil Armstrong and the other astronauts to the moon, that Apollo program was shut down. And after that, there has not been any individual who has been able to reach the moon. And the technological capacity and capability that we had around 60, 70 years back, countries don't have it today. So the logic is, if you don't build up on a technology, that technological awareness goes backwards. So we are not as technologically efficient as we were maybe in the 60s, with the lesser amount of resources available to us. So that is why Artemis Accord was basically launched. Now, this is a snippet which is going to be relevant for your prelims as well. So here, basically, Artemis Accords established by the US State Department and NASA, both of them, they were important. And then 7 other founding members: Australia, Canada, Italy, Japan, Luxembourg, and UAE, and the UK. So all of them, they came together in 2020. Now here, what kind of question can be framed in the prelims? Looking at the changing pattern of the examination, you can always expect a statement-based question where you can be given a statement that India and France have been a founding member of Artemis Accord. Now, in the din of the examination, at that point of time, many of the times candidates are not very sure that whether India was a founding member of this or not. So be very clear who were the founding members, if India has been a founding member or not, relevant for your prelims. Okay. Now, here, in that entire process of Artemis Accords, there are certain key principles which form the basic framework which drives these accords or these treaty. So what are the key principles involved? First of all, space exploration. That is the larger goal. And space exploration being the larger goal means not only exploring, let's say, the immediate surrounding of the planet, but also going to the moon and beyond. And that will involve knowledge sharing. Whatever knowledge you have gained after reaching the moon, that is anyway shared between the space agencies. So that is going to increase our overall understanding of the solar system. And that also requires transparency. Transparency in the sense, sharing of knowledge, right? Sharing of knowledge and experience. Okay. So that transparency is a must, that every country, whether they are sending a kind of a space vehicle outside just to orbit the earth, or maybe they are sending astronauts out, so they need to be a part, or that knowledge needs to be transferred and shared. And there needs to be an interoperability. Interoperability means what? It means, for example, let's suppose that Indian astronauts, anyways, are training for the Gaganyaan mission, right? India's mission and India's space mission to send astronauts back into the space. None of the Indian astronauts have went up into the space purely from an Indian vehicle or vessel. So that is something which the Indian Space Research Organization is already working upon. But when we talk about interoperability, so maybe when we talk about, let's say, a space vessel or a vehicle designed by India riding on a rocket, may be developed by France or may be developed by United States, or the astronaut being trained in United States will be able to fly out space missions. So that is where interoperability and coordination between the member countries. Emergency assistance. Emergency assistance, that is a major clause whereby all the countries, all the member countries in general, in the cases of emergency, they will have and put all their endeavors for the safe extraction of a space module or the crew. Then registration of space objects, including the space debris. So here, when we say registration of space objects, which space objects are we talking about? So we are talking about any discoveries which happen, right? Or let's say we are able to find out, or scientists in France or astronomers in France, they are able to find out that yes, you have certain debris moving around the Earth's orbit. Now that needs to be shared, and that needs to be registered. So it also means registering any new asteroid that you have found or discovered, or let's say any new comet that you have come across. So that registration should happen, preserving the space heritage. So when we talk about space heritage, what is implied in that? The region, for example, on the moon where we had the lunar landing. So that is a kind of a space heritage. So you need to preserve that, right? So example, place of lunar landing. Interoperability is not clear. Okay, so when we say interoperability, this basically refers to the ability of space organizations to use each other's resources. For example, launching Indian space mission on board an American rocket. Okay. As of now, if let's say you are carrying out that interoperability, you need to arrive at a particular deal and a treaty with that country that you are interoperating with. Interoperability means, generally, for example, let's suppose India develops a rocket module. So all the components will be largely developed as per the Indian requirements. So whether those components will work on an American module as well or not, or whether, let's say, for the training of astronauts that we are going to send into the space, that training, if it is not available in India, that can be carried out in United States, and then the astronauts can use that training for the Indian space mission. So that is interoperability, the ability to operate with each other's vessels, vehicles, as well as facilities in general. I hope that is understood. Okay, now then we have emergency assistance. Basically refers to, in the worst come worst scenarios, if let's say there's a space disaster, then the other countries will come forward to help. Then you have space resources. So space resources include minerals and also various different space extracts, or let's say rock particles, or any of the various particles that you extract from space. You need to share that. The entire world needs to be aware of that, because the space is a common resource which is available, or the space is common for all of us. The space is not that this part of the space is available for China, this is for India, this is for Russia. No, we have a common space, so that needs to have a sharing of the space resources as well. Then deconfliction of activities. For example, let's suppose any country wants to launch a satellite, right? And that satellite, maybe its path is actually getting entangled with another country's space program. So that should not happen. Each of the country should cooperate with each other, and eventually orbital debris. Orbital debris, the basic meaning of that is parts of defunct satellite, parts of rocks, sometimes rocks, in the case when the meteors, they burn in the outer space itself, right? Moving around. Yes, the NET project of Japan is an ideal example of this. Parts of rocks moving around the orbit. Now, this is very essential, guys. Always understand that majority of the times, or many of the times, the major calculation which the space scientists, they have to carry out, the astronomers have to carry out, is to find out that if the satellite that I am launching, whether it will collide with any space debris or not. Because At that level, when we are talking about the orbital level, there the speed of the vessels or any object which is moving at that level, they are moving at thousands of kilometers per hour, generally around 27,000 to 30,000 kilometer per hour. That is the speed with which the objects are moving. So imagine even a smallest of nut or bolt that generally won't cause you any damage. Even that smallest of nut and bolt which is flying around with that speed has got enough momentum to puncture any space vessel or vehicle that you are designing, or even the International Space Station. So that is where we need to have a spatial awareness of the orbital debris. Now, what is the mission timeline of this Artemis Accord and the Artemis program? So, Artemis 1, which has carried out its mission, that was basically, and it carried out its mission late last year, where there were significant amount of delays which happened during the launch, and eventually it was an unmanned mission to the moon where the exploration went ahead and it orbited the moon. Then Artemis 2, which is supposed to be launched in 2024. So, as per this mission, you have the crewed lunar flyby mission. What is the meaning of it? So you will have a crew module. Crew module means in which astronauts can actually move, in which the astronauts can be carried. So that crew module will move around, it will orbit the moon and then be back. So here there will be testing of certain equipments, especially for lunar flybys, etc. So that will be done in Artemis 2. And Artemis 3, that is the human return to the moon, expected to follow the timeline of 2025. Okay, so that is the basic aspect or the mission timeline. And for this, the strongest and the most powerful rocket ever built, that is being used, that the SLS rocket of United States. This is the SLS rocket, right? One of the most powerful rockets ever built by mankind is used for this Artemis mission. Now, India being a part of this Artemis Accord, how is it going to help India? So, first of all, the immediate tangible benefit is basically Indian astronauts being trained in United States, because ever since the Russia-Ukraine war has erupted, the training of Indian astronauts has taken a hit. It has taken a setback. So that is why these astronauts can now train themselves in United States. And then there is a proposal to send these astronauts to the International Space Station. Please understand that for a long period of time, ever since the International Space Station has come into existence, we have not had our own astronauts visiting them. So the crew visit to space station. Visit to space station. Okay. Artemis 1 timeline is 2022. Yes, 2022 has passed. I hope we are aware, Afreen, that we are already in 2023. So Artemis 1 has been achieved. So many of the times, what I don't blame you in this case, many of the times what happens is when we read something, we tend to look at it and ratify it to such an extent, or not ratify it, or be very concerned about it to such an extent that we forget that this is something which has already taken place. So Artemis 1 has already taken place, as I have already made it very clear. Okay, now that is the first tangible benefit that India will get. And secondly, India itself is pursuing its lunar exploration program. And you would be well aware that within the next 10 days, we will have Chandrayaan 3 mission, which will go for a soft landing on moon. So India is set to gain a lot of expertise, a lot of information, and a lot of knowledge with these Artemis 2 and Artemis 3 in particular. Because till now, we have not sent a crewed module. So sending a rocket, sending a probe is easy. But sending a human is much more difficult, because in that case, you don't have any chance for failure. Even if there's a 0.1% of chance of failure, that mission is aborted. So that requires a significant amount of expertise, which India is developing on its own, but then it will get a helping hand. Now, these are certain benefits. So when we talk about benefits, so first, International Space Station, visit, then lunar exploration, okay, then sharing of knowledge, this will also happen. Other than that, training program of astronauts, training of Indian astronauts, okay. So these are the immediate benefits that you can accrue. Also, utilization of vehicles of member nations, okay. So these are the benefits, but everything is not as good as it appears. So what are the drawbacks or the challenges that we have to be mindful of? Here you have to understand that even in the case of Artemis Accords, it is NASA which is leading the way, because NASA has got greater level of expertise in this area, and NASA has done significant and considerable amount of work. So the fear, which is quite relevant and rational in this case, is that our own space expertise and our own research and development, that might take a hit or that might take a backseat if we are completely overtly dependent on the foreign nations. So own capability that we have, okay, own capability development can slow down. Okay, then other than that, what can happen? So if you are a part of Artemis Accords, then yes, there is a chance of various different aspects associated, and another benefit that I will tell you about it. But then you also have to understand that, for example, if you take the case of China, China has got a target to build its own international space station, right? Russia has got an expertise in that. So in that space race where India was marching ahead, our own ambitions also will be lowered in certain expectations, and that is the estimated expectation, okay. But here the benefits far outweigh the cost and the challenges. So what is the way forward? The way forward is that while this coordination should be carried out, should be emphasized, but not at the cost of our own scientific development. Our own scientific and space exploration development should never take a hit. So that is something that you have to write in the way forward whenever you are crafting an answer. And another benefit that you can cite here is basically, if you take the case of space exploration, now that would also include capabilities to send satellites into the space. Now here, when we talk about countries like India, we have a specialty in the sense of very low cost launch vehicles and very low cost space exploration and space program. So recently, you had various different countries launching their satellites on PSLV and on the back of GSLV as well. So that has happened. So that is a source of revenue for us. Now, if we are part of the larger committee of nations, there is a greater trust. For example, if United States wants to send a satellite, and let's suppose if it has got to choose between, let's suppose, a Chinese launch vehicle and an Indian launch vehicle. So in that case, if India is a part of the Artemis Accord, we are set to earn significant amount of revenue as well. So revenue earning, okay. And obviously foreign collaboration will be there, sharing of expertise will happen. So that is the benefit and the challenges. So what is the way forward? take these benefits, be mindful that our own capabilities do not suffer in the process, and all the hard work which has been done is not laid to waste. So, here in this article, what is it that we have studied? We have studied what are Artemis Accords, we have studied the Artemis program, and we have taken a look at the timeline framed as well. What are the benefits and the challenges when we talk about India becoming a member, and what is the way forward? That is something that we have studied. So, the question, what are Artemis Accords? In that context, discuss the importance of space multilateralism. So, in the global context, you would have heard about multilateralism. What is multilateralism? Where multiple different countries they team together on the same platform for a common objective. So, space multilateralism talks about a commonality in terms of space exploration as the objective and various countries coming together. So, here in the intro, so this is for 15 marks or 250 words. So, here in the intro, you have to write about what are Artemis Accords. That is something that you have to talk about here. So, what will you write there? So, the entire aspect of the definition that we have studied, this particular portion, right? So, these are a set of statements for the or the common which set out a common principle for space exploration, lunar landing, and further exploration of the space. So that is the Artemis Accords, where you have close to around 27 member nations based on the common principle of knowledge sharing, sharing of expertise, interoperability, and so on. So that will be your basic introduction. For a 250 word answer, introduction should be largely between 30 to 35 words at max. Okay. Then after that, in the body, talk a bit more about the Artemis Accords. Here in the body, talk about the timeline a bit, that what is the timeline of the Artemis mission, and then talk about the what is meant by space multilateralism. Space multilateralism. Right? And here, why is it important? All the factors that we have discussed of the benefits, write about it. Now, the challenges also. So, discuss the importance of space exploration. So, discuss why it is relevant. Eventually, just a couple of sentences that you can write, that we have to be mindful that these accords are followed and there is a peaceful exploration of space. And the conclusion should be positive, that a global partnership will always end up heralding a positive result or a kind of a positive outcome and a greater understanding of the space and the universe around us. With that positive aspect, end the answer. Okay. Now, here, after that, we come to the second topic, and that is the deep sea mining. Parimal, why do Indian astronauts need to be trained in the US? So, see, earlier, as per the Gaganyaan mission, as per the agreement that we had with Russia, so the Indian astronauts were training in Russia. But ever since the Russia-Ukraine war erupted, so since that point of time, that training has come to a stop. So they need to be trained. Now, here, if your question is why can't they be trained in India, we don't have those facilities. We don't have those technologies, because for the training of astronauts, it is not as if you simply give them a drill that do this push-ups and pull-ups and you are trained as an astronaut. No, you need to be able to survive in or be able to be very familiar in zero gravity situations, in various different machineries that you are going to operate. You need to be very well versed with that. So that is why there is a separate training program, and as of now, that will be carried out in United States, because in Russia we are not getting that facility anymore. Okay. And then where should we include the key principles, Ragini? In the body part itself, in the first part of the body. Okay. And then Artemis Accord we have discussed in detail. Kindly look at the recordings if you want. how that puncture take place. Which puncture are you talking about, Vivek? If you are talking about the space debris, so the space debris, because it is moving at a very high velocity, so that is why the momentum is very high, due to which it can crash on into any particular satellite, making the satellite defunct, or in case of the worst scenario, it can end up crashing with a crude module and creating a lot greater amount of damage. Okay. Ananya, this is largely a mains based discussion. I have given you certain snippets relevant for your prelims in this particular portion. Just concentrate on that, okay, for the prelims. 7 founding members, you will find it in the slide and in the PPT itself. Number of members in Artemis, 27. What conclusion will be more relevant? So the conclusion basically should be forward looking, and that conclusion should talk about that how the space cooperation will end up increasing the amount of information that we have about our immediate solar system and also of the larger universe. Now, then Sunita, can you summary of this topic? I have already summary of this topic, Sunita. I've already told you that and in a recap that what that Artemis mission is. It is a global accord for space exploration, peaceful space exploration, the lunar landing and further beyond, and it is a program carried out and initiated by the US Space Department and NASA, and you had 7 different founding members associated. Then slowly and steadily more countries joined in, and now you will find that India is the 27th member. More countries are interested to join in. That will include a set of key principles around which the entire accord exists and revolves. And India being the latest entrant, that means that there are going to be significant benefits associated for India and also for the global community. And there are certain challenges in terms of our own space exploration capabilities and their further development. Okay. Chandrayaan, India has to share info about Chandrayaan 3 to the Artemis nation. Vishal, India already has shared the information even in the case of Chandrayaan 1 and 2. So, anyways, the when we talk about the space exploration or when we talk about a country like India, we have always shared that information, right? About the various different, it is, remember, if I don't know if you remember that or not, it was after all Chandrayaan 1 mission which gave us an idea about the areas where water is to be found in the region of the moon. So that is where we have a much greater understanding because of the Chandrayaan mission exploration, and that has been shared with the world already. So that will happen again. Okay. Right. If India wants to have satellite coordination for some military operation, no. Military operation, that is why peaceful space exploration. No military cooperation in terms of satellites. Do you think US will allow people to share its military satellites just like that? That doesn't happen like that. In China is not a part of it. So now we come to the second topic, and that is deep sea mining. So what is this? What is this deep sea mining? And why is it in news? So it is in news because the International Seabed Authority, I will tell you about the International Seabed Authority as well, because that will be relevant for your prelims. So when we talk about the deep sea mission, so the International Seabed Authority, which is the kind of a regulating body in general or the administrator in general, which takes care of these deep sea mining explorations and the regulations associated, that is supposed to clarify the set of norms which are going to dictate how to go for the deep sea mining. And that is going to happen this month. So that is why this has been in news. Now, when we say deep sea mining, what do we mean by that? So, this is of various different kinds, but the overall crux is very simple, that it is a mining activity. Mining activity in the sense you extract certain minerals and ores from the bottom of the sea floor. So that it is a mining activity in chief. Now, mining activity from where? From the sea floor. Now, sea floor where? At, because sea floor is not a particular plane area or not at the same depth. So this reaches at the bottom where you have the deep sea plains. deep sea plains, which are also what are referred to as abyssal plains. Abyssal plains. Right. So deep sea plains, they are at a depth of, on an average, 4 to 6 kilometers from the sea surface. On an average. That is the depth that we are talking about. On an average, let's consider average depth. It will be 3 to 6 kilometer from sea surface. Now, I hope we are aware about abyssal plains. If we are not aware about abyssal plains, these are also what are referred to as deep sea plains. So, when we talk about the ocean floor is flatter in these areas. I'll just give you an idea about it by representing the bathymetric data here. So, suppose this is the land, then here you have the continental shelf, which extends for a few hundred kilometers in certain cases. Then you have the continental slope, and then eventually you have the deep sea plain. So here, this is where the water is. So ideally, in normal scenarios, you will observe that this distance from the shoreline for the deep sea plain is for many hundred kilometers out there. So whenever you open up the atlas, or whenever you take a look at the physical map next time, look at the oceans. In certain oceans, you will observe that the coloration is very dark blue. So those are the regions of deep sea plain. They represent the depth in general. So that is the depth. So the mineral exploration and exploitation from these areas, that is the deep sea mining. Now, why is it being done, or why is it being carried out, or why will it be carried out? So that is primarily because at these regions you have the presence or the existence of large amount of mineral deposits. For example, you have the polymetallic nodules. Now, what do we understand by that? When you hear the term polymetallic nodules, what is the meaning of that? Polymetallic means multiple metals in the same nodule. Nodule refers to a kind of a mass, generally circular in shape, a kind of a mass which settles down at the ocean depth. Now, these polymetallic nodules, they are generally ferromanganese alloy in the sense that they consist of certain metals in the grade. For example, you can get nickel, you can get cobalt, you can also get certain rare earth elements from these particular polymetallic nodules. So it involves removing mineral deposits and metals from the ocean's seabed. And here, three types of mining activities are prevalent when we talk about deep sea mining. First, taking deposit rich polymetallic nodules off the ocean floor. So, what does this mean? So, basically, you devise a kind of a vessel, a kind of a submersible, which can go to that depth, which can extract that module and come out again in and repeat that process again and again in an economically profitable manner. Only then that mining will make sense. Otherwise, let's suppose in that program itself, for that vessel to go down, you spend so much money that that metallic piece will never give you that much return. So there is no point of mining. So there needs to be an economic profitability associated. Only then will a country or a company carry out that mining process. So that is the important aspect. So polymetallic nodules of the ocean floor, mining massive seafloor sulfide deposits, because sulfur in general you'll find at the seafloor around the volcanic vents, etc. And sulfur is very important mineral in terms of utility across a large amount of sectors, and stripping cobalt crust from the rocks. Means the various rocks that you have, you strip out the cobalt on top of it. Now, why has this been in news? Now, that is because the ISA here is the International Seabed Authority. International Seabed Authority. We'll come to that. Don't worry. Now, here, the ISA's Legal and Technical Commission basically will meet in early July. Now we are already in early July, so it is estimated by around 10th or 11th that declaration or that decision will be made to discuss the code draft for mining, that what should be the code, how the mining activity should take place, where the mining activity should be allowed, which are the regions where the mining activity should never be allowed. So that code will be decided by International Seabed Authority. Now, here is a kind of a general depiction of the entire process of deep sea mining so that you get an idea about the process. So, how will the process go about? So, when we talk about, let's say, here you have a vessel, right? The mining vessel, it will instill a kind of an extraction pump. This is an extraction pump. Extraction pump. Now, from that extraction pump, you will have a seafloor collector. Now, this seafloor collector overall will scoop up, or just like a vacuum cleaner that you have. When you use a vacuum cleaner across the floor, it scoops up the dust particles, doesn't it? So that is how it will scoop up the polymetallic nodules. Right? Those polymetallic nodules will be sent over along with the liquids over to the mining surface or the ship. And in the meanwhile, because please understand, when you have such a kind of a vacuum cleaner sort of activity taking place, you will never come across a scenario where only these polymetallic nodules are picked up. You will have a lot of mud also, a lot of slurry which will be picked up. Now that mud will be sent back. That mud will be released, okay, back into the sea floor. So this is the available technology as of now, or which is deemed to be developed in the near future. Now this will also involve the cobalt rich crusts of the various underwater mountains that we have in many of the regions. The underwater deposits, they are particularly rich in iron and manganese. Why? Because these oceanic floor, when we talk about oceanic floor, is made up of in general which kind of rock? Let me see if we are aware. This oceanic floor is generally comprised of which kind of rock? Igneous rock, fair enough, but which kind? Very good. So Sharat, Rosmin, Mishra, etc., Shrishti, Tehrim, very good. So the oceanic floor is dominated by basaltic rocks. So basaltic rocks, they dominate that ocean floor. Now basaltic rocks, they will have a significant component of iron and ferromanganese alloy in general. So that extraction of those minerals is also going to take place. Now in that entire process, just apply your common logic here. So first of all, whenever you have to think about it, always advisable to think about the pros or the benefits and the concerns. So what will be the benefit associated? First of all, cobalt is a very important mineral and which is very relevant for manufacturing the batteries. And as we are entering into the stage of electric vehicles, batteries and the battery technology is going to be much more critical going ahead. So you will have greater presence or minerals extracted. Now, just those minerals, they can be available on the ground surface as well. But the concentration or the amount of, let's say, cobalt, etc., which we can extract, that is simply huge or humongous. So that will give us the raw materials for batteries, right? So raw materials for batteries. And when you have the raw materials for batteries, so what will you have? Energy security. So as a result of that, you end up gaining energy security. That energy security will be attained by whosoever is mining that. Now, also, this will also mean a kind of a revenue generation, because eventually any activity that you do will have an economic aspect associated. So, revenue generation, very much a part of it, the process. But then, what are the concerns? The concerns are quite significant. So, think about it. When you, let's say, apply that kind of a vacuum cleaning process on the sea floor, the entire sea floor will be disturbed. There are many organisms which lie still on the sea floor, which is their natural habitat, and they can end up being scooped up, and they can end up being dead as well. So that the sea floor will get disturbed. Now, it does not only restrict itself to that, but in that extraction process, it will not be a silent process. Whenever that extraction happens, there is a lot of noise which is created, a lot of light which will be present. Now, that noise will be significantly not only distracting, disastrous for many of the larger animals such as blue whales, dolphins, etc., because they end up moving or transversing with the help of echolocation. All these organisms, they send the signals, and based upon that reception of that signal, that is how they end up moving. They send those sound signals. So if already there is a lot of underwater noise, that creates a havoc for the sea organisms. Then, as per the technology, you will also find that there is the slurry that you are, or the mud that you are going to push back upon. So that will end up disturbing again the seabed. So, in the terms of the concerns, seabed ecology are disturbed. Okay, the seabed ecology, that is disturbed here. Now, after that, here you also have to understand that there are many organisms which come into the category of filter feeders. What are those filter feeders? So, for example, when we talk about filter feeders, first of all, what do we understand by them? What are they? Example I will give you: corals. Now, filter feeders, for example, corals, barnacles, etc. So they themselves lie static in a place. And the seawater in itself consists of certain organic matter floating about, certain other nutrients floating about. So if, let's suppose, this is a filter feeder, that filter feeder will stay in its place, and as the seawater moves around it, it will basically trap the food particles or the morsels which are floating around. Now imagine if the entire region is being made muddied by that vacuuming process, by that vibration which is created during the extraction. So those filter feeders, they will be impacted quite significantly. And in these regions, the tolerance level of the organisms is very less, because these regions basically mean that the temperature has been consistent at these depths for hundreds of years and thousands of years. So the thermal tolerance of the organisms at these depths is very limited, and the heat which will be produced by the process can put them at risk. So the environmental risks are huge and disproportionate almost, right? Still, various countries are interested in that deep sea mining. So the concerns in this case far outweigh the benefits associated, and these concerns should be looked at. Now, how will the regulation be done? What will be the norm for it? So that will be done as per the United Nations Convention Law on Seas, or UN clause. So countries, basically, they end up managing their own maritime territory, and the exclusive economic zones of the country, which extends up till around 200 nautical miles from their shoreline. That is the exclusive economic zone. So in those regions, the countries are themselves responsible. But when you talk about international waters, it is there that it is governed by the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, that is UNCLOS. Now, under the treaty, here the seabed and its mineral resources are a common heritage of mankind. So that mining code will be announced very shortly. Now, certain snippets relevant for your prelims. That is International Seabed Authority. So what is it? So it is an autonomous organization within the United Nations system with its headquarters at Kingston in Jamaica. It was established as per the norms of UNCLOS, and UNCLOS basically established three bodies or three organizations. So you have to be mindful of them for your prelims. One is the International Seabed Authority. So it is one of the three international institutions established by UNCLOS. One is the ISA or International Seabed Authority. Other two are Commission on the Limits of the Continental Shelf and International Tribunal for the Law on the Sea. So, what is the role of each one of them? Commission on the Limits of Continental Shelf. So that ends up delineating where the shelf break exists. So in the continental shelf, after the continental shelf, suddenly the depth starts increasing. That is the shelf break. So that delineation is done by this organization. And let's suppose there is a flouting or violation of any international norms related to the sea. That is where International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea comes into the picture, or ITLOS, that comes into the picture. Then, again, important for your prelims is your UNCLOS. Okay. So, both of these, I'm sure you would have already covered if you have attended the IR sessions. These are covered in the IR sessions. So, what is this UNCLOS? So, that United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea was arrived at in 1982. That is also known as the Law of the Sea. What it does is it divides the maritime areas into 5 different zones. That is internal waters, right? Internal waters, basically they exist in the internal domain. So this is the land, right? This is what is the shoreline or the baseline where the water exists. So internal waters come in this area. Internal waters. Then you have the territorial sea, which is very much within the ambit of the country's own laws. Country's laws prevail there. So, for example, if we consider the boundary line of, let's say, the Indian western coastline here, let's suppose we consider the Indian coastline here. So, the territorial waters will extend up till the 12 nautical miles from the coastline. Okay, that is the territorial water. That is where the territorial integrity and the territorial sovereignty of the country lies. So that is where you have the territorial sea. Okay, then you have the contiguous zone, which extends further 12 nautical miles in general. You have the exclusive economic zone, or EEZ, where a particular country can explore the economic avenues in that region. That extends 200 nautical miles from the shoreline or the baseline. And then you have the high seas. This is the international waters. This is where the jurisdiction of UNCLOS and ITLOS, etc., that is followed. Okay, so EEZ is what? EEZ is exclusive economic zone. So that is the purpose of UNCLOS and what has been done. Now here, as this development has happened, already you have various different companies such as Google, Apple, etc. They have already declared that their intention that, look, because the damage to environment and the sea ecology will be so huge, we are not going to use any product made out of materials mined from the seabed. So in a way, what they are doing is they are boycotting it so that it doesn't become incentivizing for the mining companies, so that that mining process is not carried out. So here, what is the way forward that the country should follow? First of all, development of technology. Development of technology. There is no doubt that technology should be developed. We should have the technology to reach the seafloor. After all, I hope we are aware that we know more about, let's say, moon. We know more about Mars than we know about our own seafloor. We don't know that much. The Economist magazine had famously quoted as the final frontier for mankind. We have not reached the bottom of the seafloor in many of the areas. So technology is required to be developed. India is developing that technology as per which program? Which program of India is actually associated with the development of technology for deep sea exploration? Let me see if we are aware. Samudrayan mission. Very good. And the submersible is basically the Matsya 6000. So India's own Samudrayan mission is basically based upon the exploration of the deep sea. So once that happens, then no damage to the sea ecology. No damage. It should not be minimal damage. That will not work. No damage. Because many of the organisms are, we don't even know about their numbers. We don't even know about their varieties and subtypes. It will be a huge shame if, for some cobalt, we have wiped out certain species from the face of the planet. That will be a humongous amount of shame. So, no damage to the sea ecology, and that will require awareness amongst consumers. The consumers need to be aware that the product that they are using, whether that product has been extracted from the deep sea bed. If it is, then chances are that certain organisms would have been killed or damaged. So once you have awareness amongst the consumers, that will bring about responsible exploration. Okay? Responsible consumption brings about responsible exploration. You never know, we might end up 10 years from now, 20 years from now, the rate at which the technology is developing, we might end up finding a newer technology in which all this can be carried out in a very environmentally friendly manner. So we should not compromise before that happens. So that is the way forward which the countries should end up following. And this is where the corporate responsibility also comes into the picture. That for that you need to have homologation and registration of products mined. So we can develop a kind of, let's say, an identification system. For example, in the case of food, suppose, I'm just giving you an analogy here. Suppose the food and any food packet that you go to the market to buy, you will find that there is a demarcation which tells you that whether it is a vegetarian or a non-vegetarian food based upon the green and the red dot. So similarly, if the products mined from the seabed, they have such homologation, it will be easier for safe and responsible consumption also. Okay. Now, what is it that we have studied in this topic till now? What is that deep sea plain? Abyssal plain at the depth of around, on an average, 3 to 6 kilometers represents the majority of the ocean floor. Then where is that deep sea plain present? beyond the continental shelf slope area. It is rich in basaltic rocks. Now, that deep sea mining will involve the extraction of polymetallic nodules. What are those polymetallic nodules? Rich in ferromanganese alloy, cobalt, nickel, rare earth elements as well. After that, we have studied about the utility of that deep sea mining, how it can provide energy security, and the concerns associated, how in various ways it can end up killing the sea ecology, and what is the way forward. Okay. Now, deep sea mining can bring about a revolution in energy security, but the cost can be too high. Examine the above statement. So, when you have the term examine, here you have got the liberty to examine and bring into the picture both the perspectives. So, bring both perspectives. That is both the positive as well as negative. So when we talk about in this writing, it is about 10 marks, 150 words. So when you are writing a 150 word answer, your introduction should be around 20 words, 25 at max, not beyond that. So in those 20 words, what you will write? You will write about the deep sea mining. What do you understand by that? So extraction of minerals from the deeper portion of the sea or in the region of the abyssal plain, and that is the deep sea mining. And there you can write about polymetallic nodules, the sulfide mining, and cobalt stripping. It is of various types. So that will be your 20 word. Now, what ideally you should try to do is immediately after the intro, draw the rough sketch, a rough diagram, at least of the deep sea, what you are meaning by that deep sea. So, draw that rough diagram. And then in the body part, start talking about how, first of all, you have to talk about that the energy security, the various minerals that will be exploited, the revenue generation which can be done, how it will also eventually, if you want to extract the minerals, you will explore that area as well. So it will lead to a greater level of exploration as well. All those benefits you can write it out. Then after that, leave the paragraph, write a sentence that, but this also holds significant amount of cost along with it. What are those costs? So in those sub points, a sub paragraphs, you can write about how the vacuuming process, the that can disturb the seabed, which will influence the filter feeders, scooping up many of the organisms in the process to be lost forever. Then you can write about underwater noise pollution, disturbance of the seafloor. All these factors, these hold multiple challenges. In the conclusion again should be very brief. In the conclusion, just write about, at the end of the day, one has to ensure, and ISA has to ensure, that the mining is responsible, and for that, the onus also lies on the consumers, as has been shown the way by certain organizations across the globe. And that will be the end of the answer easily. You'll be able to fetch more than 50% marks. Okay. Now, coming to the next topic of the day. Now, when we talk about the uh, next topic, that is the green credit program, before that, I will take a certain set of questions. Polymetallic nodules, Pulkit, they are basically mineral aggregates which consist of materials such as manganese, in certain cases, nickel, cobalt, chromium, and certain other rare earth elements. Okay. And does southern Indian Ocean, Vivek, does southern Indian Ocean contain more minerals as compared to the northern Indian Ocean? It is a kind of a postulation because southern Indian Ocean is much, much larger. But that significantly detailed exploration has not been carried out. But overall, if you carry out the absolute numbers, yes, southern Indian Ocean will have more minerals. Um, Bhanu, awareness amongst consumers, which type of awareness are we talking about? We are talking about the awareness in the sense that, are we aware that the minerals that we are using, at what cost those minerals have been extracted? If maybe we are aware, we will choose an alternative, that awareness. Okay. And coral bleaching will also be done? Absolutely. That is where the aspect of filter feeders has been brought about. So not only the corals, but larger set of filter feeders will be impacted by this process. And Chinmay, how to write answer in 7 minutes because thinking on points gets more time. That will happen, my dear friend. The solution to that is revise or practice as much as you want. Ideally, it is suggested that you should be able to write at least 100 answers before you observe those improvement in time. So it will happen. Practice that writing. The problem which happens is generally after 10 to 20 answers, we get so fatigued and tired out, we stop trying itself. After 100 answers, you will find a small improvement in time. Write more. If you are appearing for the exam next year, keep it a target that you have to write at least 500 to 600 answers. Then you will be untouchable in mains. Just clear the prelims, you will be almost assured that I am getting a rank. The struggle is which rank I am going to attain. So develop that habit. Okay. Uh, Nikhil, that is a doubt that every nation has. Does the every area of abyssal plain come under high sea? Not always. In many of the regions, for example, if you talk about the Arctic area, so in that region, the continental shelf in itself is 1500 kilometers long. So in certain areas, so in those regions, the high seas will be in the part of the continental shelf itself. In many of the areas, you have the high sea or the abyssal plain present within the territorial waters as well. So it varies from the geographical realities of one place to other. Okay. Now, after this, we come to the Green Credit Program. What is that Green Credit Program? So, and why is it in news, first of all? So, let us first of all understand why this is in news, why we are discussing this. Then we will understand the nuances of it. So, it is in discussion and relevance because the Union Ministry basically it was first of all announced in the union budget, and then the ministry has come up with certain norms clarifying the entire green credit program that it has. So that clarification of norms and that justification of objective has come into place. So what is this green credit and what is the purpose? Credit is what? Credit is a kind of a substantive reward that you give to any individual or an organization. That is credit here. So when we say green credit, so what is it? We'll come to it. So basically, this green credit program, first of all, was announced in the union budget. Now, what was the aim? To leverage a competitive market based approach and incentivize voluntary environment actions of various stakeholders. Now, before moving into the details and the nuances and the objectives and how it will operate, let me tell you the basic of it with very simple example. Suppose now there have been various different listing which has been done. I'll just show you the gist of it. There are various different activities which have been listed for which you will be given credit. Activities such as tree plantation, water sustenance or water conservation, agriculture, etc. Now, suppose you are an organization or a larger group. Let's suppose A. Now, in your particular region, you have carried out a massive reforestation and afforestation activity. So, if you have done a good job, you will be gaining. Let's suppose you have carried out afforestation and water conservation. Now, for this, what will you be given? You will be given green credit. Now, what is that use of green credit? What will I do with that? I was good before itself. So, here, let's suppose an organization. Let's consider an organization out there which is not particularly environmental friendly. For example, let's suppose we consider the airline sector, right? Let's consider or an oil exploration. Let's suppose we consider one of the oil companies, Exxon, right? I am sure you would have heard about it. It is a multinational organization which basically is in the project or in the area of oil exploration. So let's suppose ExxonMobil that you consider. Now, Exxon as an organization has certain obligations which the law of the land will determine, because overall across the world there has been an endeavor to have a greener condition, greener environment, and a sustainable environmental practice. So it will have certain set of targets, and what those targets will be: environmental, sustenance, or sustainability, right, or conservation. Okay, now in order to fulfill those targets, it will require certain credits. So there can be two ways of it. One way can be, the first method can be that Exxon in itself carries out that afforestation activity, etc., carries out that water conservation. If Exxon ideally does it on its own, that is beneficial, because eventually if larger number of people do these activities, then the environment will be a better place to live in. But Exxon has got its expertise in oil exploration. Exxon has not got its expertise in water conservation or tree plantation. So let's suppose Exxon does not carry out these programs on its own. So it has to meet its target. So in order to meet its target, what will it do? It will buy the green credit. Buy credit from individual, organization, farmer producer organization, anybody who has earned those green credits. And in return, A will be given lots of money. So, as a result of that, what happens? Exxon has been set a set of target for environmental conservation. Exxon fulfills those targets, and the individual or the organization who is specially carrying out these sustainable activities, they are also rewarded in the process. So as an overall sum product, you have a better environmental maintenance and conservation carried out. So that is the gist of the entire green credit program, what this program is all about. Now, I hope we are aware and now we have understood the basic of it. So who will administer this entire program? So the administrator of the program will be Indian Council of Forestry Research and Education. This is a portion which will be relevant for your prelims. Kindly keep that in mind. It will be relevant for your prelims. UPSC can easily confuse you out there. It can state or list any particular organization that this is the organization responsible for green credit program. That is how statement based questions are framed to confuse you guys. So always be very clear who is the administration. It will develop guidelines, processes, and procedure of implementation of this green credit scheme. Parul, it is very, very similar to the carbon trading. That is correct. And yes, it is like the transfer of carbon credit itself. Okay. I hope that is understood. Now, here, the purpose of it. What is the purpose of it? So, create a market-based mechanism. Market-based mechanism means where you can trade it, exchange it. For what? Providing incentive in the form of green credits to whom? This is also relevant for your prelims. Please understand, you can have a statement that green credit can be provided to whom? To individuals, FPOs, cooperatives, forestry enterprises, sustainable agriculture enterprises, urban and rural local bodies, private sector also can be rewarded and awarded this green credit, industries and organizations. So that green credit will be provided to them. When? When they carry out a certain set of activities. There are 8 activities which have been listed. 8 activities which are listed. So, for example, tree plantation, you will be given green credit. For example, water conservation, green credit again. Then sustainable agriculture, if you are carrying out, conserving water in the process, growing the suitable crops in that region, organic farming, again credit will be given. Waste management, if you are carrying out, sustainable waste management, credit will be awarded. Air pollution reduction, mangrove conservation and restoration, eco mark based green. Now, what is eco mark? Let me see if anybody is aware. What is the meaning of eco mark here? Okay. So basically, whenever you carry out a manufacturing process, now the manufacturing process, yes, very good, Mumtaz, Rohit, and Afreen also. So whenever you manufacture any product, oftentimes the manufacturing process will end up impacting the environment adversely, maybe by the water emissions in the production process or the carbon emissions take place. The environment can be damaged adversely. So that is where eco mark is provided. It is a kind of an ecological sustenance mark which is put to give you an idea that it has been produced in an environmentally and ecologically friendly manner. So if you carry out that environmental friendly manufacturing, so eco mark based green credit will be provided to you. Sustainable building and infrastructure, again green credit. So any of these activities which are carried out by whom? By individuals, FPOs. So FPOs, cooperatives, what kind of activities will they carry out? Water conservation, sustainable agriculture. Individuals, what will they carry out? Tree plantation, forestry enterprises, tree plantation, sustainable agriculture enterprises. Urban and rural local bodies, what kind of that green credit will they be able to earn? Waste management. Industries, they will be able to earn eco mark based green credit. So everybody can earn these green credits. Now, once they have earned those green credits, then what? These credits are basically tradable, right? You can trade them. So these are your credits. Let's suppose A has earned it. A has got these green credits. Now let's suppose A goes to an exchange. We have the commodity exchange in our country. We have the stock exchange. So let's suppose we go to an exchange. Green credit provides to whom? Anjali, that is what we have talked about. It is provided to individuals, organizations, industries, urban, rural, local bodies, all of them. So there, what A can do is, A can sell it, right? Just like you sell your stocks, dividends, or the various different shares, etc. You can sell these credits. And in return, you can get some money. And an organization or an industry which has to meet that standard and the legal obligation, they will pay that money to the exchange and earn credits. Okay. Now, this is expected to encourage the private players or the private sector organizations and companies as well as the other entities to meet their legal obligation and target by buying and exchanging these green credits. But then, what are the challenges? The benefit, I hope we are able to understand what will be the benefit. The benefit will be that there will be a greater environmental conservation. And by the way, please understand, this is not the carbon credit that you read about in carbon market, right? In environment, you study about the carbon credit system as well. This is different. Carbon credit is associated with carbon dioxide emission and the trade of those carbon credits. Each carbon credit represents 1 ton of carbon dioxide equivalent. So this green credit is different from them. Both of them will complement and supplement each other in conserving and preserving the environmental conditions. Now, what are the challenges that are faced? First of all, there will be greenwashing. Now, what is greenwashing? Greenwashing basically means that let's suppose I am an organization, let's suppose I am a hotel chain. Or let's consider the greenwashing, which is very predominant nowadays. There is a court case being filed in United States. Let's suppose I am an airline, right? Let's consider the largest airline in India in terms of market share. Let's suppose I am Indigo. Now, on the face of it, I can claim that look, I am environmentally friendly. Why? Because I have bought a lot of these green credits, right? So I can show you that I'm environmentally friendly. But every airplane that flies emits a lot more amount of carbon dioxide than any other vehicle that we can even think about. And the problems created by them is also humongous. So, on one hand, I'm carrying out that environmental degradation and I'm covering it up with a kind of a gauntlet or a kind of a curtain, so to say, to show the rest of the world that I'm environmentally friendly. That is greenwashing. Another example is that of the hotel industry. Almost a decade and a half back, there was this norm which still is prevalent till nowadays in many hotels that you go to. You'll find that they will give you a kind of a notice of sorts that this hotel is environmentally friendly. So kindly try to reuse the bed sheets, the bed rolls, as well as the towels, etc., that we give you. Now, on the face of it, the hotel is telling you that they are environmentally friendly. But what is the real motive? They are trying to save the laundry cost and they end up saving millions of laundry cost. So that is greenwashing. Now, with the easy availability and trading of these green credits, there are greater probabilities of greenwashing taking place. So that can be carried out. Then, what is the other challenge? Tax evasion and laundering. How? So, for example, let's suppose I'm in industry A. Let's suppose. Now, what I have done is I have established a shell company A1, which is a part of my own parent organization. Now, this A1, it will earn some green credit. Maybe in a kind of a transparent way, in a non-transparent way. If it does it in transparent way, no issues at all. Everything is fine. Eventually, the environment is taken care of. But let's suppose it circumvents. It tells you that I have planted 500 trees. And the reality is very different that after 1 year, none of those trees have survived. But in the meanwhile, you have earned those credits, haven't you? So basically, if it is done in a very bona fide manner, fair enough. But if there is a malified intention involved, then A will pay A1, A1 will give the money back to A. So there can be recirculation of money, money laundering can take place, tax evasion can take place. So, what is the way forward? The way forward is, as always, greater and stronger regulation. Bona fide means done with a good intention, malified means done with an evil intention. So that is the difference. Greater and stronger regulation, monitoring of credit earned and long term benefits. Okay, so that needs to be done, that needs to be carried out. So these are your challenges and way forward. So in this topic, what is it that we have studied? What is that green credit program? Now, it is a kind of a tradable instrument whereby you can earn green credits based upon the list of 8 activities that you carry out. You will earn those green credits, then you can trade them, you can sell them somewhere. That will be to any. Now you will sell it to whom? You will sell it to any organization, private organization, industry who has got a target for meeting those green credit obligations. You will sell it to them and you will earn some money. So who can earn those green credits? Individuals, organization, FPOs, then even urban rural local bodies, etc. Everybody can earn green credit. What are the challenges? It can lead to greenwashing because of easy availability of these credits. And the second is that the same money, in a fraudulent manner, if it is not carried out in a transparent manner, if these green credits are not rewarded in a transparent manner, there's a huge possibility of the any particular company opening up a kind of an NGO which it can distance itself, or any organization it can form, where it will not show direct contact, but it is a part or linked to the promoters. Maybe that NGO will carry out some activities of earning those green credits, and it will funnel the money back into the system, because eventually that company A will be buying those green credits, and it will be recirculation of the money. So that is where we have to be very vigilant. Now, the question: discuss the role played by the market instruments like carbon credit and green credit in bringing about environmental sustainability. So it is a 10-mark question, and again of 150 words. So you have to talk about what do we understand by the carbon credit and green credit in the introduction itself, and then talk about how the tradable aspect of it, the market mechanism of it, will bring about easier implementation, easier achievement of target, better tracking. All those aspects you can bring to the picture. Okay. Now, after that, coming to the next topic, and that is the Bonn Climate Meet. Now, this climate meet was conducted recently in Bonn. Now, what this meet is basically about, this is a kind of interregnum meet which was organized before the Conference of Parties number 28, or COP28, to United Nations Framework Convention to Climate Change, which will be held in Dubai in later part of this particular year itself. So the delegates to the Paris Agreement, they met in Bonn, Germany, paving the way for some key decisions for United UN Climate Conference in Dubai in 2023. Just a brief recap for you, relevant for your prelims. Ideally, I have done that on multiple platforms. It is available on YouTube as well. It is available in your lecture series as well. So I am sure many of you would already know the timeline. I'll just give you, for those of you, us who are uninitiated, who are not aware of it, the UN Climate Conference. This is a part, this basically refers to UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. Okay. Now, when was it arrived at? It was arrived at in 1992 as a part of the Rio Summit. Okay. Now, every year, you have meeting of the member nations. So that is where you have the conference of parties, which are conducted every year. Last year, you had that conference of parties held in Sharm el Sheikh in Egypt. This year, it is scheduled to be held in Dubai, UAE. Now, as per that UNFCCC, it was in 1997 where you had the Kyoto Protocol, which was arrived at. Then, as per this, it was in 2015 where you had the Paris Agreement, which was arrived at. Okay? And all these, basically, what is the aim? To reduce greenhouse gas emissions to control climate change. Okay. And Paris Agreement, what it did was it set a target that by the year 2100, we have to ensure that the warming of the planet does not exceed 2 degrees Celsius. 2 degrees Celsius as compared to what? As compared to the pre-industrial era prior to the industrial revolution. So the temperature, because you all would have heard about global warming, the temperature is rising, so that temperature rise needs to be controlled to 2 degrees Celsius with an optimistic aim to limit it to 1.5 degrees Celsius itself. Now, in this Bonn climate meet, there was a significant amount of deliberation based upon the Paris Agreement. Now, when we talk about Paris Agreement, it is basically different from the earlier agreements on certain aspects. We are not going to talk about all those aspects, just one aspect. As per the Kyoto Protocol, etc., and the other agreements that you come across, the countries they have been set a target that you have to fulfill this target. In the case of Paris Agreement, the countries can set their own target. So here, countries set their own target. Target for what? Target for emission reduction. Target for emission reduction. But then, here, let's suppose you are studying, right? And your parents tell you that set up your own target. And you set up a target for today or for this week, that this week I will study first 4 chapters of, let's suppose, any particular book or any NCERT. Now then, how is it that you are going to follow up on that target? So this particular target setting needs to be elevated every 5 years. Every 5 years, the countries have to increase the target. That is the part of the Paris Agreement. Every 5 years, revision of target has to happen. Upward revision. Now, this particular target that they have set, that is what is also referred to as NDC or INDC. This target that they set, that is also referred to as INDC. What is INDC? Intended nationally determined contribution. Intended nationally determined contribution. Okay. Now, every 5 years, you have to update that INDC. But here, there is one of those problems. What is that problem? The problem is that I have set myself a target that today I will study Lakshmikant, tomorrow I will study Bipin Chandra, day after tomorrow I will study, let's suppose, geography. Now, in those cases, who is to take a look at it, whether I have indeed studied that Lakshmikant, whether I have indeed finished that Bipin Chandra before moving into NCERT for geography? Have I done that? So there needs to be a kind of a verification mechanism, isn't it? So that for that verification mechanism needs to be developed. So for that, Paris Agreement had a clause that, look, we will establish a global stocktake mechanism or GST, not the tax one. This is a stocktake. Stocktake means what? Taking stock means what? Taking a look at the development which has happened. So that GST mechanism or global stocktake will be a verification mechanism. This is to be carried out every 5 years. To be carried out every 5 years. Okay. Now, if this is to be carried out every 5 years, Paris Agreement said that it should be started with 2023, then 28 will be another global stock take, 2033 will be another global stock take. So all in this Bonn climate meet, there was finalization and discussion about how this global stock take mechanism should happen. How should we inspect? How should we verify whether a particular country is meeting its obligations or INDC or not? So that global stocktake mechanism and its verification and finalization of the mechanism happened at the Bonn climate meet. And this was an important discussion which happened to be started. This is to be started from 2028. Okay, this eventually is to be started from 2028. But then the norms, the mechanisms need to be finalized much before that. It is not as if that global stocktake will start from 2028. So in January, people in suits will suddenly come into the various country capitals and they will take a stock. No, the mechanism is a long drawn process. So that was discussed here. Then the finances and technology was also discussed, in the sense of what finances and technology are we talking about. So across the globe, there has been a discussion of provision of finances, that is funds, and availability of technology to the developing nations, so that the developing nations can work upon reducing their emissions. But the developed nations, they promise the moon. They promise so large amount of sums that, okay, we will give you $100 billion, $200 billion, $300 billion, etc. And they become the poster child, the good boys and the good guys of the global environment. But then eventually, when the time comes to give out that money or that technology, that is when they simply walk back. So all the developing nations, they are suffering because of this. Their emission levels, they cannot reduce it suddenly, because for that they need newer technology, they need newer investment. And for that, the developed nations are not helping. So this is where there was a lot of, and in fact, in this climate meet, there was a lot of heated discussion and debate happened, because Australia, on the penultimate day, made a statement that, look, all of the developing nations, you are talking about the fact that developed nations have destroyed the environment, but we have done it long time back, and since 1990s, countries like India and China are actually destroying the environment. This is where India retorted back sharply, and rightly so, that, look, you promised us the technology and the finances. And those technology and the finances, we are asking you not as a charity, but because you have exploited the environment 100 years back, you have developed that finances today. We also need to develop those finances, and our journey will be 20, 30, 50 years long. So after we have developed those technology and finances, we will save the environment. Before that, if you want us to do anything else, please share the finances that you have promised with us. So this is where a lot of heated debate and discussion happen. But then eventual discussion will happen in the Conference of Parties meeting, to be held in the month of November or December in Dubai in 2023 itself. So the challenges which basically emerged out of this climate meet are simple. First of all, there is a significant lack of global consensus between whom? Between developed and developing nations. Between developed and developing nations. Why? Because finances are not given, losses and damages are not given, the technology is not shared. So, what is the benefit of being the so called poster childs of environment conservation? And what is the benefit of having that large amount of technology at your disposal if you cannot share it for the benefit of the human man or the human race? So that is where the countries, they bicker around. Then developed nations and their role has been put a question mark upon, and loose financing check in terms of availability of finances for loss and damage technology, etc. That is something which occupied the larger aspect of Bonn climate meet. Now, why is this Bonn climate meet important? This is important for the aspect of global stocktake mechanism, for which in the coming parts or in the coming months, in the later part of the year, I hope you all are regular in following current affairs, and I hope you continue to be regular in the later part of the year as well. You will observe that this is also being discussed in the Conference of Parties, which is going to be held in Dubai. Okay? Now, the question: discuss the role of global stocktake mechanism in adherence to the climate goals. So here, this is a 15 mark 250 word answer. So here you have to talk about what are those global climate goals. You have to talk about what is this global stocktake mechanism, when is it supposed to come into play, what are the benefits associated that one can expect out of it. All of that you can talk about. Okay? Now, then we come across a topic which has appeared in the magazine Kurukshetra, and that is the rainwater harvesting for sustainable agriculture. Now, when we talk about rainwater harvesting, what is the meaning of it? Rainwater harvesting refers to that whatever rainfall that you have received, collecting that water and then storing it somewhere. You are harvesting the rainwater. Now, that rainwater harvesting is essential. Why? Because in a country like India, where on an average we end up receiving 120 centimeter of rainfall annually. That is the amount of rainfall that we receive annually. Now, here almost 70 to 80% of that rainfall 70 to 80% of that rainfall is received in the 3 to 4 months of the monsoon. Okay, so 70 to 80% is received during monsoon months. So as a result of that, you have excessive water in certain areas. A lot of that water goes to waste. And in the following months, dry conditions prevail. And due to that, during those dry conditions, droughts occur and crop failures take place. So that is why for sustainable agriculture, you need to carry out a significant amount of rainwater harvesting. And why is rainwater harvesting important now? Because please understand that as the climate is changing, the amount of rainfall received is becoming uncertain. So you have very long dry spell, okay, followed by excessive rain for 2 days. So when you have very long dry spell, these leads to drought conditions, water scarcity, and crop failure. That is resulted. Whereas excessive rains, all that water drains away and is lost. So that is why what we need is the storing of that rainwater, utilizing and storing that rainwater received in those 3 to 4 months, utilizing it all the year round, and rainwater harvesting can be carried out. So that is why rainwater harvesting is important. Now, in Indian context, why it becomes much more important? Because already in many areas we are carrying out unsustainable level of exploration and exploitation of groundwater. I hope we are aware that the groundwater levels across the country, they are depleting at an alarming rate. They are depleting quite significantly, right? So even extracting that groundwater now becomes more costly, because I hope we are aware that if you are extracting the groundwater from this level, it is easier as compared to the water which has reached that depth. So the input cost for agriculture is increasing. And also, if the groundwater level depletes, then those dry conditions, they become very predominant. And still, the reality of agriculture in our country is that 60% of sown area is dependent on rains. That means no agricultural methods or facilities are available. They are dependent completely on the amount of rainfall received. What does that bring into the portion? Frequent chances of droughts. If the rains fail, the crops will fail. The food security will be in doubt. So if rains fail, for example, what will happen? Crops will fail. And if the crops will fail, as a result of that, food security is in question. Right? Already in our country, you would have observed that rice and wheat stocks, buffer stocks, is at a significant lower point, which is lower than the past 3 to 4 years. So that is where the food security comes in question. And not only food security, in a country where more than 50% of the population is involved directly or indirectly in agricultural practices, the impact can be quite humongous. Because when a crop fails, the farmer loses the avenue to earn. And when the farm income falls, the rural demand falls. Because what do we mean by that? If the farmer doesn't earn enough, they will never buy anything from the market. Anything, for example, let's suppose they will not buy a motorbike, or they will not buy, let's say, a new furniture or something like that. And when the rural demand falls, the overall urban production also falls, and that leads to a global or the national economic glut. So that is why what you need to do is develop a kind of a resilience in order to face this. And how do you do that? Rainwater harvesting. So how do you carry out this rainwater harvesting? Traditionally, you will find in many parts of the country, there are very traditional methods to store the rainwater. For example, in this region of the central India and the central portion of the country, which is already water scarce, for example, consider the region of Bundelkhand, right? In some parts of Madhya Pradesh and Uttar Pradesh. Now, there you will find a kind of a under or at the ground level structures which are built where water from the surrounding areas during rainfall, they will end up accumulating. The Haveli system, as it is referred to. You have the Baolis in Rajasthan. So all these, what do? They store that rainwater. The wells that you dig out. Overall, how can it be done? So let's suppose you receive a lot of water in 1 or 2 days. That water will tend to flow. You would have observed in your surrounding regions as well. Excess water tends to flow. So what do? You block their flow. You build a kind of a temporary structure so that that flow which is happening is blocked. Means what? Water will stay in some point. Right? When the water will stay, water will start penetrating the ground. It will percolate. So slow down the speed of water, automatically groundwater recharge will happen. And that will be able to support the crops even during the dry season. And availability of water for drinking supply, for the animal husbandry, etc., will also be made available. So as we enter into an era where climate change and rainfall is becoming much more irregular, anyways, later part of this year and next year is going to be an El Nino year, which means India is going to receive lesser rainfall. The importance of rainwater harvesting is significant, and also much more important in a country like India. If, let's say, India would have received rainfall all throughout the year, fair enough. You have the equal availability of water every month. But all that rainfall is concentrated and the remaining portion is dry. So what do? You save that. And that is the crux of this particular topic. Now, this is something which can be relevant even for your essay writing. The question which can be framed: discuss the importance of rainwater harvesting in sustainable agriculture. So in the introduction, you simply have to address what do you understand by rainwater harvesting, and then draw a schematic diagram. Then in the body portion, what do you understand by sustainability in agriculture and why it is important for in a country like India, because majority of the rainfall received during the during the monsoon season, and then the dry season follows. So rabi crops, they are oftentimes impacted. All those aspects you can write that how it can hamper the or how it does hamper the food security due to failing rains. Climate change is getting exaggerated. Then also groundwater exploitation has lowered the groundwater levels, so rainwater harvesting can be a panacea or a cure. Okay, now then after that, sustainable agriculture is basically that kind of agriculture which is environmentally friendly today and can be carried out tomorrow also. That means not greater exploitation of either the soil resource or the water resource. Okay. Um, then it will address issues created by climate change and groundwater depletion. Absolutely, yes, Chaitanya. GST norms will be set up at COP28 or at the Bonn climate. Till now, GST norms have not been set, Pulkit. Now they have been discussed in greater detail. Chances are there will be a greater deliberation at COP28. So at COP28, you can expect that there will be a greater clarity of those norms, but they will not be finalized, as is the expectation. They will not be finalized even in COP28 meeting. Okay. Sustainable agriculture means you are using the agricultural process in a way where you are not over exploiting the groundwater, you are not carrying out over irrigation, you are growing crops which are suitable to that area, you are not applying excessive fertilizers, so the soil fertility is also maintained. So all those are sustainable agriculture. Now, I will come to the last topic and then I will take certain more questions. The last topic, this is largely theoretical and text based. So that is why I've included almost every possible aspect of it in the PPT and the slide itself. Use that while you are revising. This is water conservation through community planning, where the community structure in general can help in water conservation. But through this, what we are going to address is that in this month, in this magazine of Kurukshetra, you are made aware of the various government schemes and programs which are functioning. So for your prelims perspective, you should be aware of these government programs. So we'll talk about the state level programs, the national level programs carried out for the water conservation process. So here, to achieve the objectives of inclusive growth, what do you need? You need basic infrastructure. And a very important part of the basic infrastructure is what? It is availability of safe, clean, and affordable drinking water. No civilization has survived without water. Large scale migrations have happened because of water scarcity. The case in point is after building the very costly Fatehpur Sikri fort area, the Mughals vacated that because of scarcity of water. Consider the Mesopotamian civilization, the Egyptian civilization, the Roman civilization, or the Harappan civilization. All of them, they established themselves on the river banks because availability of water, safe, clean, affordable drinking water is a must. Now, that water is getting depleted. Groundwater is getting depleted. Why? Because of unsustainable agricultural practices, because the water is being lost as the river discharges, etc. Now, that is where for water conservation, now from here, this is relevant for your, not so much for your prelims, because in prelims, they don't ask you in general about the state programs, but this is important for your mains, even in your essay paper. Because when you are writing an answer about water conservation, if you are able to list out the important schemes carried out by the various different states, your answer suddenly becomes much more authentic, right? The examiner or the evaluator also comes to know, okay, this candidate knows that which program is being carried out. So very quickly, take a brief look. So you have the Neeru Chetu program implemented in Andhra Pradesh, aimed at the collective community level participation and the spread of awareness to make the state drought proof. So how? By rejuvenating and revitalizing, by desilting of tanks, channels to these tanks, etc. So that there's a greater water storage, greater amount of harvesting. So Neeru Chetu is associated with Andhra Pradesh. Then you have Jal Jeevan Haryali being implemented in Bihar, where you have better and more water efficient methodologies of irrigation which is carried out. So drip irrigation, right? Then less crops, growing crops which are less dependent on agriculture. So water conservation even during irrigation. So identification, restoration and renovation of all storage structures. Here again concentration is on what? Water storage or conservation through water storage. So this is again how? By encouraging the farmers. So public participation, community building. So that is Bihar, Jal Jeevan Haryali. So you have Neeru Chetu by Andhra Pradesh, Jal Jeevan Haryali by Bihar. Then Sujalam Sufalam Jal Sanchay Abhiyan, that is by Gujarat. So it is a public-private partnership program and involves deepening of the water bodies before the arrival of monsoon for what? Again, to enhance storage, right? That provides water security in the long run. That is the purpose of this program. So Neeru Chetu, Jal Jeevan Haryali, Sujalam Sufalam. So first one Andhra Pradesh, second one being carried out in Bihar, third one in Gujarat. Then Jal Hi Jeevan Hai being implemented in Haryana. And again, how? In this case, by growing crops which are not very water consuming. For example, in Punjab and Haryana and Western UP, the regions which receive very little amount of rainfall, you'll find that rice is grown, sugar cane is grown, which require high amount of water availability. So what do the farmers do? They exploit that groundwater. The groundwater level goes down. So what will be the better alternative? Grow millets, grow pulses, grow maize. That doesn't require that much amount of water, right? So that is conserving water. Jal Hi Jeevan Hai. Then Pani Panchayat being carried out by Odisha. So optimum utilization again from agriculture, because agriculture, believe it or not, is one of the largest consumers of water in general, right? Then Jal Yukt Shivar Abhiyan being carried out by Maharashtra to make the various districts of Maharashtra drought free. So make Maharashtra drought free by making individual villages water sufficient so that water security exists. Then Mission Kakatiya being carried out in Telangana, where encouragement to build more tankages to enhance greater storage. Because please understand, eastern part of Maharashtra, that is the Vidarbha region, which neighbors Telangana, that entire area is in general water scarce. So that is why frequent crop failures are experienced in that area. So that is why greater storage and water sufficiency, rainwater harvesting, they are very much required in these areas. And that is where these particular programs come into play. But you also have the program being carried out in Rajasthan, that is Mukhyamantri Jal Swawalamban Abhiyan. So convergence of schemes of various departments, including the community, the villagers, etc., and managing rainfall runoff, groundwater, in situ soil moisture to be maintained, again through greater storage. Then you have the union government initiatives, Pradhan Mantri Krishi Sinchai Yojana, where you have the irrigation facilities, efficient irrigation facilities, which are made available, right? So here, Pradhan Mantri Krishi Sinchai Yojana, per drop more crop, increasing the water efficiency, increasing the efficiency of water utilization. Okay. Har khet ko pani, to increase the level of irrigation. By Manrega also, building certain water conservation structures. Atal Bhujal Yojana, to improve the level of groundwater. So all these are being carried out by the state government as well as the central government. The central government is also going for the mapping of the entire country so that you get an idea where how much water is stored underground, so that adequate planning and management can take place. That is a part of the NAQUIM program, National Aquifer Mapping and Management Program, right? Rain area development program. So it is being done both at the state and the central level. But what needs to be done? Community participation. Community means what? You and I, the common individuals, the citizens, they have to form a larger community, and they have to participate in this process of conservation of water. So how? Preparation of water security plan at the local level. Local level has to participate in that. Discuss on the sustainability of the water schemes, the implementation of the water schemes, viability of it, water reserve audit, that where is it that water is being stored, where is it that the water structure needs to be improved or worked upon. So promoting execution of projects, utilization of funds, arrange training capacity, all these programs carried out at the community level, at the village level, panchayat level, taluka level. If every villager, farmer, individual is encouraged and motivated to do that, only then in the long run conservation will happen. So use this particular article and topic just to keep a track, or just as a revision module for the various water conservation schemes being carried out in the state and the center, because you don't get a compilation of this. Here, you get a compilation of the various water conservation programs carried out in various different states. That will be of significant help to you when you are writing an answer about or an essay about water conservation in your exam. You can always cite this to get good marks. Okay? So, after this, we come to the question. Manrega is Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme, that is MG, what is spelled as Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme, and it was passed by an act which is Manrega. Okay. Yes, Surya, I've taken a look into it. I'll revert back. Sustainable agriculture, Himani basically refers to, I have already replied to you earlier as well. So this time pay attention. Carrying out an agricultural practice or an agricultural activity in an environmentally friendly manner, where you don't have to over exploit the groundwater, where you don't have to over apply the fertilizer. That is sustainable agriculture. Okay. Then here the question is, community participation in the work of water conservation can be made more efficient. How? So in the above context, discuss the role played by the community and the government in water conservation efforts. So here what you require is a listing. That is it. That how community, so what can be done at the community level? This slide is a foretelling for you. And what is done at the government level, we have also discussed about that. So that will be all from my side today. That is where I'll end up the discussion. I'll take a certain set of questions and then we will end the session here. In case your questions are still not answered or replied to, please do not worry. Please feel free to get in touch with us, write us at IS Live, we'll get, or Target IS, will get back to you. Okay. Now, how to remember all the schemes? Niranjan, it will come only with repetition and revision. What I would advise you, write it down somewhere in an A4 sheet of paper, and don't then uh, let go of that A4 sheet paper. Stick it somewhere so that you frequently revise it. Anyways, if you are reading newspapers on a daily basis, chances are that within 1 year you will come across many of these again and again. Okay. Uh, Many countries are objecting to Dubai's hosting of COP28. It is not exactly Dubai's hosting, but the individual who has been made, the minister who has been made in charge, that individual has also been the chairman of an oil company earlier. So that is where the dispute is. But then recently you had the Prime Minister of Bangladesh writing a long article how this should not be taken as a sticking point. So I hope that dispute will be overcome. Prabjot, should one read these magazines, or reading gist of them is enough? Gist is enough. Okay, overall, you should be aware of the gist. We are covering each and every article of these magazines through various webinars. Just cover those. Okay, and Then Sijo, can you once again say the gist of Green Credit? So Green Credit is a program where the credit will be given if you carry out a certain set of environmentally friendly activities for water, for example, water conservation, waste management, etc. That is when you are rewarded with Green Credit. You can exchange it and you can give it to the various organizations to help them fulfill their targets, and you will earn money in return. Okay. Is it, Lakshmi, is it compulsory to write answer in the white blank paper in the exam? Yes. Right now, if you want a ruled paper, you can write in that, but eventually you have to develop your writing skill and the handwriting skill based upon the blank paper. Pulkit, will there be technology transfer to ISRO from NASA and other countries under the Artemis Accord? Under general circumstances, no. That transfer of tech will not happen, but knowledge sharing will happen. Practices will be shared. That what is the norm to be followed before, let's say, a launch process? What are the objectives to be set? That will be shared. Okay. Convergence of schemes, Shyampai, basically what it refers to is that you have multiple schemes which are being run by the state government and the national governments, many of them having the same objectives. So there is a wastage of funds. So you ensure that all those schemes have the similar objective. Okay. Shriman, should we write see and right answer or unseen? Unseen always. Is this concept of green credit just for making money, Ashwin? No, it is for ensuring environmental conservation, and this will help meet the standards and the targets set for environmental conservation. Prabjot, greenwashing is basically when you convey to the world that you are conserving the environment, but on the other hand, your practices are destroying the environment. Example, you have the airline industry. Okay. Sonu, to read the Hindu newspaper or just CNA, what's the difference? See, when you read something on your own, that is a different experience. You get to understand the basic nuances here and there. And many of the times you don't understand something. So that is when you attend the CNA. It will be much more beneficial, ideally. So that is what I would suggest to you, that there is no replacement to the self-reading of newspaper. You have to get into the habit of reading the newspaper. Okay, and why Atlantic are explored, why Arctic they don't? So Atlantic, even when we talk about deep sea mining, you have the region of Hawaii which is explored. There's a fault near Hawaii which is explored. Even Atlantic is not explored significantly. If you are talking about exploration just in the sheer terms, so nowadays, because please understand, Arctic has got a larger amount of ice block. So that is why there is a lot of uncertainty underwater where that ice might be present. So that is why there is a very limited amount of missions carried out under the region of the Arctic. But then, because Arctic is very rich in oil reserves, all those countries are concentrating on that. Okay. So that is where I'll end the session here today. It is already 10:40. I hope that the session has been helpful, productive to you. In case any of your doubts still remain unanswered, please do not hesitate. Write to us. We'll get back to you. Until we meet again, take care of yourself. Thank you. Have a good night and goodbye.